Have you ever spent hours building a park only to feel like something is missing? Most of the time it's not the dinosaurs, buildings or paths, it's the foliage. Today I'm going to show you 5 simple foliage tips that will instantly make your Jurassic World Evolution 3 park more realistic and immersive. Whether you are a beginner or experienced builder, these techniques can completely transform your builds. So let's get started. Tip number 1. Use terrain to your advantage. In this build you can really see that the flat terrain really makes the whole habitat look extremely boring and you don't really have a guideline on where to put your foliage. But with only a few little slopes you can create a much better habitat. Not only is it more interesting to look at, but it also gives you a guideline on where to put your plants. Flat terrain is one of the biggest reasons your parks and your habitats can feel unrealistic and boring. Before placing foliage, spend a little time shaping the landscape, and you can do this quite randomly, as you've seen in this little square. I normally tend to make the back of the habitat a little bit higher and the front of the habitat a little bit lower, and by only using this simple little rule you can already make a little bit of a shaping in your habitat, which makes it more interesting. And just by having the little hills and slope you can start to place down a couple of rocks and then fill in those areas with your plants. And also here we are making the backside raised, so you're also gonna use more larger trees and foliages in the back, and towards the front we are gonna use smaller pieces or very low foliage so that the guests can also actually see the dinosaurs. You don't need extreme terrain changes. Even subtle elevation differences can completely transform an area. This is one of the easiest ways to make your build feel more realistic without adding extra detail, and this is definitely the first step you should do when building your habitat and starting your foliage build. And just like that, you've transformed a flat and boring space into a much more interesting and intricate area just by creating a little bit more of height variations within your habitat. Tip number 2. Place rocks first. And I know this is a foliage tutorial, but what is foliage without rocks? So we are still going to talk about rocks, and they are getting their own little tip. When creating natural environments, I almost always place rocks first before adding plants. Rocks help define the shape and flow of the environment, and once they're in place, foliage can be used to soften the edges and blend everything together. This approach creates much more believable landscapes. Think about how vegetation grows around obstacles in real life, and rocks are obstacles. Plants adapt to the terrain, not the other way around. So building the terrain and the rocks first just makes sense because the plants come afterwards. Building with that mindset can help you make your environment look far more realistic. Now skipping to the planted result, you can really tell that the plants are almost hugging the rocks. They are placed just around the edges and the corners of the rocks and in the little nooks and crannies of the little rock piles. And this whole square only took me 10 minutes to build. Tip number 3. Build in layers. One of the mistakes I see builders make is placing every plant type at the same time. Instead, think of foliage in layers. First, place down your largest trees. These create the structure and the shape of the forest, and the biggest trees are also the eye catchers of your habitat, so you really want to focus on placing those at the very beginning. Next, add medium-sized vegetations like smaller trees, bushes, flowers, and other sorts of plants. Those are the main parts to really start filling in big chunks of your areas. Finally, finish with ground cover such as ferns, low shrubs and other small details. And also here I start with the biggest of the smallest ones and slowly go even further down until I reach the very small plants that I use to add the last little bit of details. Building this way creates depth and makes the area feel much more natural. Even from a distance, layered foliage looks significantly better than randomly placing plants everywhere. And after I've built my layers, I look at the whole area and decide where I want to place a few more details, for example, a fallen log in front of the rocks. If you're only going to remember one tip from this video, make it this one. Tip number 4, use plant clusters, or I also like to call it the island technique. One common mistake I see is placing individual plants everywhere. In nature, vegetation usually grows in clusters or islands, and instead of placing one bush here, another one there, a singular tree in one corner and a few shrubs in another one, try creating small groups. And in this example, I used one fallen log and I'm slowly creating this big island and focusing really on this fallen log. And I'm also incorporating tip number 3, where I start with the biggest ones. So I firstly use the very big items as trees and big bushes or fallen trees. Then I slowly go over to also adding some rocks. This is one of the few occasions I place rocks after anything else. And then I'm slowly going down from the vegetation size, from medium bushes to small bushes to then small singular plants here and there. And then at the very end I create a very open area around this island with the grass pieces. And you are going to place different islands throughout your whole habitat to fill in those areas. And you don't only need to make these big islands as this fallen log island, it can also be just one rock cluster that you're slowly filling in with some plants, and it can even be as small as just a few pebbles here, a little bit of dead wood there, and just a couple of low shrubs. And you're going to fill in those open areas with a little bit of grass, or you can leave it completely open depending on your biome. And this is how you're going to fill in your habitat. Tip number 5, add extra detail around water. Water naturally attracts vegetations because plants need water to thrive. That's why shorelines are some of the best places to add extra foliage detail. Around lakes and rivers, increase plant density and variety. Use bushes, reeds, ferns and smaller vegetations close to the water. And as you move away from the shoreline, gradually reduce the density. This simple transition creates a much more realistic ecosystem, and it also helps draw attention to the water feature within your park. In this example, I will build a small lake and I will go really heavy with the foliage in here. Think of an oasis in a desert. The desert is really harsh for plants, so there naturally doesn't really grow anything. And if you have a little oasis, a little water feature in there, you will see that the plants will go absolutely crazy around the body of water. So that's what we are thinking of. We have this one body of water and we are going to be extremely heavy with our foliage in here. And I'm also going to use a bunch of different foliages. So I wanted to make this a swampy area. This is not an oasis in the desert, but we are still going to keep the scheme of going really heavy in here. And as you can tell, I'm also again incorporating the 2 previous tips that we've talked about. So I'm starting with the biggest foliage pieces. I've even started first with the rocks, and then I'm slowly going down from the foliage size. So I'm using the biggest ones and I'm going to use the smallest ones, and I'm also focusing a lot around the rocks to create these islands even within this small little area. And those were my 5 favorite foliage tips for Jurassic World Evolution 3. Let me know in the comments which tip you found the most useful, and if you have any building tricks of your own, I'd love to hear them. Let me know if you want to see more tutorials and what especially I should focus about. And if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more Jurassic World Evolution 3 tutorials, speed builds and park design guides. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!